Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode. Today, I'll be speaking with the founder of the Clean and Sober Love dating app, Joaquin Barreda. Thanks for joining me on the show, Joaquin.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. So I'm excited to hear all about the CASL app and what you're working on at your treatment center down there in Fort Lauderdale. But first, I'd like to hear a little bit about what things were like before you got sober and how you found recovery. So can you share a little bit about that?
I would love to. I'm somebody who, look, I'm not going to say that I had an easy life, but, the reality is that, there were things that happened throughout my life that were definitely troublesome. I grew up in a family that was very loving, very caring. My mother took care of me, my grandfather, grandmother, and I grew up in the 80s. So we played outside. It was something that we just did. And I grew up with a grandfather who was a very alcoholic. And there were a lot of things that I learned that were, I guess, cultural. And then, back then you didn't really have to, study or do anything in school. So I like when I look back on in my recovery and I think about emotions and things like that, I can remember my earliest memories of having anxiety, insecurity, and fear was all when I was in elementary school.
Okay.
So, fast forward, I tried my first drink when I was 7. I tried my first joint when I was 13. But so this is where my story gets completely different from anyone else's. I tried cocaine when I was 13. It's like I smoked a joint. 4 months later, I tried cocaine and tried crack cocaine. This would all happen within months.
Okay.
Again, not the typical story. Fast forward, I went to high school, did all that, and went into college. And my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she passed in 97. I was 19. Just really rough, no father ever, no father. My father disappeared when I was 3. So a lot of loneliness, a lot of despair, a lot of, again, the anxieties and insecurities that had always plagued me.
Sure.
Everything was, I guess you can sum it all up in fear. Like I just had a major fear and void and looking for validation in relationships and all of that. So somebody came into my life when I was 24 years old who took me to a 12-step meeting. And in that 12-step meeting, it's like I understood what the person at the podium was talking about. Although our lives were completely different, he was an attorney and all these things, super white collar.
Yeah.
I understood when he was talking about all these emotions. And so, I made a pretty good go at staying sober, working the steps.
Okay.
I did a lot of conventions and conferences and traveled and got to meet a lot of young people in recovery. And I was in the young people recovery scene, and all of that was cool. Then I met the woman of my dreams. We were going to have a baby. And I decided, you know what? I just got to man up. I got to go ahead and, you know, have a drink, you know, like a man, you know, and do this the way it ought to be. And
wow.
So now to backtrack just a hair, I definitely stopped doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
What the 12-step recovery community says you're supposed to be doing. Go to meetings, talk to your sponsor, work the steps, all that, you know, all these things. I had stopped that. Like, I thought that I was okay. I thought I had a strong enough foundation. You know, I thought maybe it was just because nobody taught me how to drink the right way, or, you know, I never had anyone to teach me how to be a man or do things the right way. So
yeah, that makes sense. And so how long were you sober at this point, or how long did you stay
3 years.
sober?
I was three and a half years.
Well, man, I'll just say real quick, I appreciate you saying the I stopped part. Like, I stopped doing extra, because that's always how it starts, right? Is you stopped basically doing whatever it was.
That's how
I
it
appreciate
starts.
you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because, man, I remember early on in sobriety, and I still hear it sometimes, and I think it's rough for like people that are new to recovery. It's like, yeah, I had 3, 6, 9, 12, whatever years, and then I drank or got high again. And it's like, well, man, what the hell happened? You know, like they don't follow up with that second part. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I really do not like the slogans. I'm not an AA cheerleader. I'm not that guy. Like, you know, but it's just what happened. You know, like I didn't make the meetings. I stopped doing what I was supposed to be doing, you know?
Yeah.
And the reality is that I had a business, money coming in and all these things. And I just, you know, the sponsees would call and I would be like, oh my God, this guy's got so many problems. And, you know, it was just one thing after another, like the meetings, oh my God, this meeting sucks. You know, this guy won't shut up. And it was just nonstop type stuff, you know, that I started to nitpick at. So anyway, I had a drink, and then and you know, nothing major happened, and I jumped into another business. I did very well at it, and my life got better in a functional sense.
Okay.
And I was living a very cool life, new kids, my girl, you know, who was to be my wife, she was just starting to deal with someone who she didn't know what addiction was or anything like that. And I started to spiral pretty out of control, but the money kept me afloat.
Right.
So anyway, 8 years ago, I had, and I have to paint the whole picture, and it's not to over dramatize what it was, but you know, I had a business that was doing very well, 5 cars, 2 acres. Like, I had the dream, you know?
Yeah.
But very lonely. I was very lonely inside. I was drinking like a lot, and I got a DUI, and then I got another DUI, and I could not stop. Like, there was no way. Like, I was considering jumping, you know, like I was at the jump off spot, but I was incapable of making the decision for myself. So the police, thank God, they came into my life. The judge says, you know what, you're going to treatment. And I said, thank you very much. I'll do whatever it takes to get better if you get me the help that I need. And so she did. And I had the burning bush type of spiritual experience that Bill W. had when you read the story. I had the experience where I'm in jail, and this guy, typical question, you know, hey, so what are you here for? And I said, and I don't know why I said it, I just it just rolled off my tongue. I said, dude, I'm an alcoholic.
Wow.
And he said, no kidding. I've been sober by the grace of God in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous for 12 years. And da-da-da-da, you know, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, you know, are you out there? Like, are you, you know, who's, you know, there's got to be something there. So anyway, I got to the treatment center. They gave me the therapist. Therapist says, hey man, what's your problem? Like, what's the deal? And I go,
Right.
I don't know. I guess my deal is that I'm selfish. And she says, well, if you're ready to start working on the selfishness you suffer from, we can help you. And I said, well, how? And she says, well, you got to be selfless. So that kind of sparked this whole want and desire to want to help people. I started because in treatment, I didn't have anything, nothing tangible that I can go ahead and give people or do anything for. So she gave me an exercise that it was for me to pray with people.
Okay.
And so I started to do that. And anyway, my whole foundation this time around has been to give back, be of service, be a servant, and work on this humility thing that I have a major problem with. So that's really my little story there in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, and I think we're leaving out, you know, that things got quite a bit better probably, but we'll get into that here in a second. So I do want to ask, man, you know, you're touching on the spiritual side of this, and I'll just say, like, I was someone, you know, I'm not going to go into the whole spiel because there's a lot of people that can relate to this. Raised Catholic, not my favorite thing in the world, kind of forced upon me, you know, forced to go to mass, say the rosary, like do all these things that, you know, a teenager doesn't give a shit about really.
Right.
You know, and so I was not interested in spirituality, to say the least, or a relationship with a higher power or anything like that. If someone's listening right now and maybe they're new in recovery, or you know, maybe they've been struggling with this, or they're just kind of wondering, like, man, how do I improve this relationship? Or maybe this is what's missing from my recovery. Like, would you have any suggestions as to how someone can kind of start to build that relationship?
Awesome. So this is my explanation, right? So you're new to recovery, you go to these meetings and people are talking about this whole, you know, like higher power thing, and then of course they're going to close the meeting with the Lord's Prayer, and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah, right.
this is not what I signed up for, right?
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I have this way of looking at it, right? That you know how the feeling that you have for your parents, that connection. You know, I could never come between what you feel for your mom, or you couldn't do that, you know, where you come between somebody else's love, right? And it's a power, you know, that you know, me and my kids, you know, nobody could tell me, hey, you can't love your kid. Impossible, right? There's no chance that could. I mean, I would die for my children, right? That power, that force, is definitely a power greater than me. What you feel for your mom is definitely a power greater than me, no doubt about it. And when I explain it to my sponsees, I'm being for real. I can't come between what you feel for your family. I can't. It's a power greater than me. Love is definitely a higher power, and it's an easy way to conceptualize just the conception of what is, you know, a power greater, right? Now, for me, what happened was that I really dove deep into my faith, because what I did was that I started really thinking about when it was that I cut off, just like you said. I was a teenager, I was Catholic, teenager, And if they weren't going to take me, well, then I ain't going.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah.
so then I went back to that. I was going to confirm that I didn't believe, right? And
Okay.
here's why. And I kind of went right back into it, and I fell in love with my faith, and I fell in love with the traditions, and I fell in love with everything that is, Catholicism and all of that. So now I've been doing a lot of service in that world too, and it works for me. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that I love, and it gives me my space to meditate and give praise and all of that. Now I don't push it. I don't even really talk about it ever. You'll never find me really talking about it because it's very personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
But make no mistake, if you are talking about what the 12 steps are, having had a spiritual awakening, that's the point. We have a spiritual awakening, right?
Yeah.
And we suffer from a spiritual malady. So everything is spiritual in nature, right? What we're trying to achieve, whether that's learning spiritual principles, learning how to live a practical life with these spiritual principles, because really all the principles that they talk about in the program or that you learn in the program, they're spiritual in nature, right? So, honesty, trust, hope.
Sure. Yeah.
You ain't buying no hope in no Walmart. They ain't got it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, man, I really love that higher power analogy. Just the love, or the relationship between myself and my parents, or someone and their parents, or someone that they care close about. Like, I've never heard that before, and that's pretty cool, And I think you just said it, like, it's whatever works for you. And I know people that do all kinds of different stuff,
Oh, yeah.
And I don't really think it really matters what it is. And I don't want to single people out that might be listening or watching that aren't in a 12-step program, because I think whatever someone believes in, like, that's their business. At the same time, I think that in out of a 12-step program, it doesn't have to be in a Catholic church or anything like that, or your parents' God, or, I mean, I really like the conception that you just came up with. Like, it's the love, basically. But, I think if someone is wondering, because I was kind of this person, like, why do I need this? I think the easiest thing for me was, number one, is it was so much easier or so much harder for me to say this doesn't exist, just because of some of the situations that I had that you kind of described, where these people just pop into your life, and I should have died 20 times, and all these things in retrospect that happen, and something was there. But also, I think it's just like, especially going through recovery, I think it's pretty powerful to, like, be able to hand some of the stuff that we go through in life off to something else, and I don't have to be in charge all the time,
Love that.
And man, that was just like when I was able to just, like, let go, or some people call it dropping the rock, right? When I was able to just let go, man, I'm going to share this with you because I heard it the other day and it's been stuck in my head. You probably heard this. I don't remember hearing this cliche along the lines, through the years, but let go or be dragged. And I thought that was
I've heard that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that. I was like, man, that is so good. I need to, like, tattoo that on my forearm or
because that's
something.
what it is, right?
Yeah. But anyway, I don't want to get hung up on all that too much, but I did want to ask you about that because, the spiritual side of all this is part of my story. And that's something I didn't used to talk about very often. And you brought it up, and it's something that's helped you. So, man, I really love what you shared on that. So moving on here, if you could, because I like to ask this, I think this is something that's helpful for someone in recovery, no matter where they are, whether they're new or they've been around a while. What do you think the biggest thing was that you struggled with early on in sobriety? I know you had talked about, like, not really having that, that father figure and some things like that, but was there anything specific to sobriety that was kind of going on? I know for me, like, just the lifestyle change, the fast money and all the other things that went along with the addiction was really hard for me to get rid of. And some of the people, for instance, is there anything you can think of that it was a little bit of a struggle for you?
Everything. I mean, uh, look, I didn't share it in my story, but I mean, I had cultivated this life
Mhm.
that was, yes, fast living, money,
Mhm.
me, and I guess there's a couple of hardest things, really.
Sure.
Um, that first year, the first year, I think that one of the hardest things was trying to trying to find different ways to cope with situations,
Mm.
right? So my mother-in-law would be, whatever, the typical mother-in-law, up my ass, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right. And how do I deal with that problem, right? Like, how do I
Mm.
cope with her? So just and then the parties, like, so like everybody would be like, dude, why can't you just go to a party? Like, the family part. Family
Okay.
was really,
Yeah.
really difficult, right?
Sure.
Family
Sure.
was number one. My wife's side, they would be like, dude, why can't you just go to the party, and just be normal? Like, why can't
Mm.
you just, you can't just fucking drink? And I'd be like, no, I can't just drink. That's the problem. If I could, I
Yeah.
would, trust me.
Right. Yeah.
So having to defend my sobriety too was another, like, one of these, like,
Hmm. Yeah.
why I kept finding myself in these stupid predicaments where I'd be like, why am I even defending this? Like, I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
It is what it is. This is the way I want to live. What's the problem?
Mm.
So, um, I guess something else that was a problem was figuring out who I was going to um, make my close circle, right? Because in fellowshipping, you meet everybody, you meet all kinds of people, and unfortunately, look, not everybody has the best intentions, right? And you kind of have to be mindful of where you're at, dude. Like, if you're in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting or you're in an AA meeting, good chance, man. You're dealing with some heavy hitters, and all kinds of stuff, right? So, I was also very suspicious and very cynical about, different people. So trying to stay out of my own way in being cynical and all of that, I had to kind of just stand back and observe and kind of build relationships the way they ought to be. So I started to really work on basic life skills. I went through 3 different sponsors before I
Wow.
ended up with who's been sponsoring me for the last 7 years.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so a word of advice or a suggestion is that the sponsor is not going to be offended because you just you're not clicking or you feel that maybe you need to move on.
Man.
Get that shit out of your head. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Hmm.
We as sponsors want the best for you, and if it's not us, please find it with someone else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you have to. So yeah, that's
Man, yeah, no, I can relate to all that. And I really love what you just said. I think, because I tell guys that I'm sponsoring, like, hey, uh, I want you to think of this as a business relationship.
right.
And if it's not working out for you, like, dude, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, if it's not a
Please,
good
yeah.
fit, then let's just keep it moving and it's fine. Just let me
Right.
know what's going on. So I get that 100%. But I think, with all those struggles that you went through, obviously you stayed in action, right? You kept moving forward. You went and you found the next sponsor, and finally one that clicked. So I think that's what's important. So that's awesome. So I want to hop into the app, man. The Clean and Sober Love app. All right. How did this come about?
So I sponsor a lot of guys, right? When I first came out of treatment,
Hmm.
I'm at home and I'm watching TV, and this this commercial comes on for farmers only.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
right?
how is this a thing? And it's like huge.
Right. So I was like, dude, I wonder if they have anything like that for us.
Wow.
So I looked, and what was available was prehistoric. Now, I have a wife and kids, but I'm a business mind, right?
Sure, yeah.
What I saw was very, very old, and it was websites, and they were ragged out, and it was like, it just looked terrible.
Yeah.
So I went and I bought it was bad. And I bought up a ton of domain names.
Okay.
Clean and sober people meet. I mean, I bought everything. And then I parked it. Didn't do anything for years, And so again, I'm sponsoring people, and that's that. So I was sponsoring a man who was very young, and he just, his experience with life in the realm of dating was like horrible. Like, it was bad. Like, it was, he was someone who was using, and he would use drugs, and just didn't get around to learning how to communicate right, or build relationships right. So
okay.
So he gets better, a lot better, and then a whole lot better, and it's a couple years down the road, and he's like, yeah, so I'm gonna go on this app and I'm gonna go date. And he says, when do I tell the girl that I'm gonna go, that I'm an alcoholic? And I was like, ooh, yeah, I don't know. They don't really teach you that one, right?
Man, I'm laughing because I literally had this conversation a while back. One of the reasons that I wanted to get you on the show, because I've mentioned the app a few times, but I mentioned it to this guy that I used to sponsor, because he's out in Cali, and he was like, yeah, man, like, I don't know how to, like, at what point do you drop that, like, you're fucking crazy, basically.
Right. Right. Yeah, because listen, you're only coming into the program because you fucked some shit up, right? It's not like, I drank, one or two many beers. It's because you really did some damage, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
So he's like, yeah, so at what point do I say that I'm an alcoholic? And I was like, man, I don't have a good answer for you. The next week, he's like, hey, so I met the girl, and I'm gonna go to her apartment, and I'm going to hang out with her, And I'm like, okay, bud, no problem. And I get a call, and he's freaking out. He's outside of her apartment, and he's like, bro, what do I do? She wants to smoke weed. And I'm like, so look, here are your options. You can go inside that house, bro. You can nail her and do what you want to do, or you can leave. And here's the problem. If you stay, bro, there's a good chance that you're going to get away with it and nothing's going to happen. Then you're going to come back. And you're probably going to get away with it that day. And then you're going to come back. And that's when she got you, And then it's over. And then everything that we work towards, it's over. So I said, damn, man, I wish I would have went forward with my dating site. And he said, dating site? That wouldn't have helped you any right now. It's dating apps, you got to have a dating app and this and that. And I was like, wow, I wonder what that is. Dude, our CASL was developed in that conversation. He leaves the girl's apartment. We can't stop talking. It was like what people talk about, I invented this on a napkin. Like, that's what happened,
Wow.
So we ran with it. He had all the expertise with all the apps and all of this, and he helped develop it. I mean, that's the co-founder, and so we sought out to help people like us, where we come from a world, man, where, like the brink of insanity and death, the gates of so that's where we stand on the common peril, right? Where we're equal and we can identify, and it's so much easier to show up and be like, yeah, I know exactly what the fuck you've been doing, So
yeah.
it's just it was an easy thing, really to develop.
That's awesome, man. Wow, that's a great. Well, I love a lot about that. I mean, it came from because see, I feel like the situation you just described is pretty has got to be pretty common, and if anything, just like when you're not sober or in recovery, like that's the type of thing that people are going to do. Like when they link
Yeah,
up for the first time, it's like, hey, let's meet at a bar. Or, when you're in somewhere like, again, like my buddy out in Cali, like weed's legal. It's like, you're smoking, or even if it's not legal, maybe you're smoking, And so, I
right.
mean, and that's just kind of that's just a normal thing really for people.
Sure.
So I think I like that because this was all based on like a real life situation that I think happens a lot. But I also love just being someone with a business mind myself, just the whole conversation of him leaving and you literally like building this thing over the phone together.
Oh yeah.
And he stayed sober. I like that part too. But
He's
so
still sober. He's sponsoring a bunch of guys. He's
that's
doing great.
awesome. That's awesome. So how does the app actually work? Like, on Tinder, and man, I'll just say I'm very grateful that I've been with the same woman for a long time and I never had
Yeah.
to experience the dating apps and all that. But so how does this work? I know like on Tinder, like you just swipe and it's that type of thing. Like how does this work?
So really, the app has two things, right?
Okay.
So we are your typical, you swipe to the right, swipe to the left. You can chat on it.
Okay.
We just now for COVID, we came out with video chatting and all
Oh,
of
that's
that.
awesome.
Yes, very cool. It's also in Spanish. The app, you can use it in Spanish. But the other part of it is that we have this, because of our Instagram presence and everything that comes with that. It's not just the dating aspect. It's this whole community
Okay.
of people that are networking and talking and being friends, right?
Mm,
Because I think that recovery today looks a whole lot different from what it used to.
for sure.
Back when Bill and Bob did it, you know what I'm saying? Like you were kind of stuck in New York in your little place. You were stuck in
Right.
Akron, Ohio. You were stuck in. So now with today, what the program looks like and what we're doing is because now we have so much traction on Instagram. You know, there's such a big community where we get to share ideas and thoughts and watch people's growth, right, in
Mm,
recovery, which is watching transition. Just it's something to be grateful for, and so that's something else that the app carries. Where it carries a lot of weight is that where other apps, they just don't have that.
yeah.
Yeah. But listen, it is your typical swiping, wanting to meet, chatting,
Sure.
profile, all of that stuff. I linked up with Pocket Rehab, Damien, who's out there doing it. Now you can get to Pocket Rehab from our app. So if you happen to be on our app, and some for whatever reason
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you need to talk to somebody about some recovery stuff, Pocket Rehab is something that you can get to from our app, right from the settings menu. And the other thing is that we're also trying to keep people honest, and we really work towards getting rid of the spammers and all of that, because look, it's a dating app.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
it's
sure.
just what it is.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
pop up all the time. And so with the video chatting, I think that really helps in so many ways.
Mm,
A suggestion for anyone using the app: be mindful, right? You don't know, right? So why, ask questions. What's your home group? Ask recovery questions. If it sounds funny or
That's a good
fishy,
point.
let
Yeah.
me know.
Yeah.
I will nip that in the bud real quick.
Yeah, man, that's a really good point. So, man, I think one of the reasons that this is important, I think you just said it, like, well, you just said it to a degree. People are going to date. Like people in recovery are going to date. And I'm going to ask you about this in a second, but I've had, and I think my own thoughts on this have gone back and forth. And I'm starting to think that maybe, some of the suggestions that I used to think around relationships and dating and recovery that I thought were pretty set in stone, I think it kind of varies from person to person. And I've had other people on the show that have kind of said, the same thing, just in reference to men or women that they're sponsoring, or just conversations they have with friends or advice they give or whatever. So all this being said, like, you're a 12-step guy. It's very common knowledge that there's a suggestion of not dating within the first year of sobriety, right? And really, like, I think it's also like not making any major decisions, which is, there's always the joke about, well, what about the third step? You're making a decision to, turn your life over to your higher power. So, but I mean, so what are your your personal thoughts on that?
Personally speaking, I have yet to find that in the big book.
Fair enough.
So, this is what happened, so you had the treatment centers that came in, and the therapist came in, and they came up with some really cool things to tell people, and that's what we know, right?
Very true.
Yeah. So 90 meetings, 90 days, and
Mhm.
meeting makers, there's a lot of these things that I don't really know that they're really program approved things.
Sure.
So the reality is this: it's unrealistic. It's an unrealistic expectation for someone who has this kind of baggage, right? You're coming off of a crazy run, and you tell them, listen, we're going to change your life. Oh, and by the way, you can't have sex. How? Yeah. How about, why don't I teach you how to talk to people? Why don't I teach you how to go home, make yourself a sandwich, watch some TV. If you happen to have a friend who's willing to do it with you, bro, God bless him. Whatever, you know what I'm saying? Just look, don't drink, right? Go to a meeting. Yeah. Don't take advantage of this person. Tell them what's up from the very beginning. Be upfront. Look, I'm a sick ass puppy right now. Yeah. I ain't shit right now, but whatever. It is what it is. I'm trying to get better. And I think that it's just an unrealistic expectation. I don't ever tell my sponsees, hey, listen, you can't have sex, you can't be in a relationship. Listen, they're gonna do whatever they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I can only guide them through the steps. That's what my job is as a sponsor. When I deviate from what I'm supposed to be doing, I end up looking like an idiot. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I've had guys that had relationships where they're like, okay, so what do you think? My girlfriend this and that. And then of course I open my big fat mouth, and only thing that goes in there is a big old shoe. Like I stuck my foot so deep in my mouth because I gave my thought, and belief over something that I should have just shut. Like if you were teaching someone the steps, right? Teaching them the basic 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We'll dive into 4 and 5. We'll get into 6 and 7. Maybe we can start working on some of these things, that why you feel that sex is something that you cope with, and all these things. If you're working the steps, dude, it all kind of, it works itself out. Yeah. But some of us need to learn the hard way, and that's okay too. For me to forbid someone to date, it's completely unrealistic.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think that's where, my thinking has changed. And for me personally, I don't think I've ever I don't think I've ever really made that suggestion to a guy. I think, I see both sides of it. I see lots of different sides of it, really. I think that's a thing, that I'd agree with some of the other people I've interviewed that are like, hey, dating early on in sobriety, relationships early on in sobriety, it's based on the person and where they're at. Because, it's like, on one hand, like, even though I was in a relationship early in sobriety, I didn't know who I was. I didn't really love myself yet. So how am I really going to, care for, or, maybe not take advantage of someone else? On the flip side, there are people that are mature in terms of their relationships and feelings, and not using other people, and not getting into this kind of danger zone where we're swapping out, sex for drugs. And then,
Right.
maybe drugs slowly, make their way into the picture, and there's all this other stuff going on. So I know that I can't kind of like inject my own stuff in there. Like, it's based on that person. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with it these days.
So you're dead on. You're right. It should be left to them to decide. I think, not that you said that, but I believe that as long as I'm not telling someone what to do, and or insinuating that I have the answer, because I don't. I really don't. I don't know what is the right way, and I just know that if you work the steps, you have a better chance at not fucking somebody over. You have a better chance at staying sober. You have a better chance at making a life for yourself. If truly working the steps, if you do it in an honest way where you really, dude, your life is going to be fine no matter who comes into your life, what kind of job you have, no matter, all these things. Your whole life changes. That's what the 9th step promises you. You're not going to have fear of all these things, right? That's what it tells you. Right. So yeah, and one last thing, a lot of us don't do well with discipline and obedience. So yeah. the do this and don't, and do that and don't do this, and I don't know. I just I didn't learn that way. So.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, just kind of circling back around to the app, I think it's an awesome idea, because, like, I think one of the biggest things is, we were talking about struggling in recovery in general, being lonely, man. Being lonely, I would say, is like one of the biggest things. And if you don't have a gateway or a platform to communicate with someone else that understands where you're coming from, and you really are just stuck, it's like, hey, it's my home group, or it's, just this recovery group that people are, maybe I'm sober, but I'm not really plugged into a recovery group or something. So I don't really know how to meet people. I think it's providing this platform for people to come together. And I really like how you said there's a community aspect to it as well. And just the fact that this pocket rehab deal is built into where, like, if some stuff's going down, then you can get help. I think that's all really awesome stuff. So I think it's an incredible idea. Now, I think you've already given a lot of great pieces of advice, but maybe if there's one piece of advice in particular that you'd like to share with the Sober Nation.
Don't be afraid to change. I think that a lot of us get hung up on, oh my God, what's my life going to look like? Because I'm so used to this life that I've created. And I know that it ain't shit, but I'm so afraid of change. I think that the best advice is that do what makes you feel good, and sobriety is something that makes you feel good. Genuinely, it will make you feel good. Don't be afraid of changing. If you give this a chance, The steps give you all these promises. Every step has a little promise. There's a bunch of promises, you know. I can't really guarantee anything, but I can guarantee you that if you give this way of life a chance, you will be the happiest person you know. I am. I truly am. I never thought that my life would ever be this.
Yeah.
If you ask my kids what daddy does, they'll tell you daddy helps people. That's it. That's my job. They don't know anything else. They just know that I help people, you know. And I'm sorry, this is what you need to be doing. I'm sorry. Give back. Give back. Give back. Do service. Do a ton of service. Service. If you think that you've done too much service, do some more service. We're going to be feeding the homeless now on 18th. We had a food drive a couple weeks ago. Service, a lot of service. And do service when nobody's looking. Don't tell nobody you're doing it. Just do service, you know, and that's it.
I like that, man. I like that. I love that. And my guess is that your life has gotten pretty good directly from helping other people. And it's a good reminder to me, man, because I've had the same experience. And I know that's not that I expect that my life is going to get better, but that's been my experience so far. And I'm not going to mess with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So you can learn more about the Clean and Sober Love dating app. You can find it in your app store. You can learn more about Mastermind Treatment Center at mastermindcare.com. Thanks again for coming on the show, Joaquin.
Thank you, Jonathan, so much for everything. This was super cool.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.